Hello, I'm Mike Wheeler, and I have the pleasure of hosting Democratic Dialogue this month, and the even greater pleasure of being with Jeremy McKean, who is the social media chair for the Gloucester Democratic City Committee, among many other things that we'll get to shortly. But thank you for joining us, Jeremy.
Yeah.
So you have that responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
You publish online extensively on a progressive platform for younger men. Is that correct?
Yep, it's called the Good Men Project. It's an online magazine. It's a progressive men's magazine for it's kind of the conversation most men's magazines don't have. So it's a great platform for bloggers and online personalities, and we repost from people that get popular or have viral videos, and then we have 35 articles a day, so there's a lot of content. Mostly it's we aim at taking down racism and sexism and misogyny. It's if GQ was really progressive and only online. So
yeah. So you're stylish too, I take it.
No, but I had actually this shirt. I was hired by Dockers to write a piece a few years ago, and so that was a nicely paid writing gig that they gave me free clothes.
This is the first time I've talked about men's furnishing when I've hosted on this.
We were talking about how nice that jacket is, so
There are other things we're going to turn to, though.
Yeah.
And this isn't a sound like a digression, but it's not. In addition to that, or maybe on top of that, you teach English at Lynn Tech.
Mm-hmm.
And when we spoke last night, you mentioned that you're currently working through Arthur Miller's Crucible.
Yep. Just we finished Act 2 today, and I teach 9, 10, 11, and 12 honors and AP. Yes. So the Crucible, timeless piece. Very, especially today, social media, how fast things go. I mean, imagine the Puritans on Facebook accusing each other.
Well, so that's the point. People might have wondered, where are we going? We're closed now. We're talking about Arthur Miller's Crucible, but that was a very political play in the 1950s, which I have to admit I can remember. Remember well the McCarthy scare and the hysteria. And although the Crucible is set back in the late 1600s, it's about hysteria.
Sure.
It's about hysteria and about the lack of courage people have in standing up to it.
Yeah.
So he was writing about that era, which is in the past, and here we are in the present, where there's an enormous amount of hysteria that's propagated online.
Yeah, and just the questioning what fuels a mob, questioning what fuels hysteria, looking at propaganda. We are a hyper society. We're not only hyper focused on certain things for very short amount of time on social media, but everything goes out and the worst things stick. So online. In real life, things would take, if you think of it took you 6 hours to take the horse to church, in 1690, and today it takes 4 seconds for something to go around the world, whether it's a video or content or something.
So I've vacillated on this. When we spoke last night, when we talk about some of the bizarre stories that have floated around, some of the slander that, just keeps on going, you don't want to confirm it. I remember when the New York Times completely exposed, and I will talk about it now, the Pizzagate nonsense. That's the wrong word, though, because it actually caused a lot of harm to people.
Yeah. Ruin the pizza place. I mean, just,
So let me,
for one.
Let me recap. I assume that most people remember this, but there was this story that exploded, and there were a number of reverberations of it, that supposedly in a Washington, D.C. basement of a pizza place, there was a child sex ring being run by Democrats.
Right.
And completely bizarre story, completely false. Among other things, there was no basement in that, in that place. But on Facebook, something like 120 or 130 million views of that story were seen. And even if the great majority of people seen it said, this is bizarre, this is ridiculous.
Right, they
What
saw
did
it.
come up next?
Mm-hmm.
There are some people who were alarmed, including one man who came in with an automatic rifle
Right.
and fired a gun to break a lock and so forth, because he actually thought that horrendous things were taken there.
Yeah.
And what we don't see, Jeremy, and this is the end of a comment, and then I want you to jump in.
Yeah.
What we don't see are all the people who, as a result of that, didn't vote for Democrats, voted for Trump,
Yeah.
or didn't vote at all, which
Right.
is just about as
46%
damaging.
of voters.
So can you say a little bit about how that poison, and we talk about virus, how that spread?
Yeah, there are many different wells that have been poisoned by misinformation. You know, you think about how easy it is to prey on people's fear and how that spreads so fast across the world. And you have basically, you know, young hackers and young thugs. I mean, they're not thugs in the gangster sense, but they're people who have no ethical problems with spreading misinformation, and they're hired to write false reports. They're hired to write false headlines. These people, paid by either other governments or paid by, you know, political factions within Republican Party, and they have no shame in spreading propaganda, misinformation, memes. That was a big part of the election, was that a certain faction took such liberty with misinformation on purpose to not just sort of as if it was a game to pump up the support for Trump, and also as if it was a game to tear down Hillary. And this became kind of a watershed moment in American politics, where you have people who might not be that involved in politics in real life online. They can create hundreds of memes a day. They can hire out bots from all over the world to like things.
Okay.
And so a lot, you know, you said 120 million, a lot of those were probably farmed out. And so they have whole rooms of people in other countries hitting like, filling out false reports, filling out false reviews.
Some of these
This
came,
is a new
some
reality.
of these came from Macedonia, but I want to be sure
Right.
people can live long and happy lives without knowing what a meme is or
Yes.
a bot is.
Yeah.
Though that's true to this point, but maybe we all do have to know
We do.
in order to cope with it. So just sort of Tech Talk 101.
Sure.
We're talking about Facebook,
Mm-hmm.
which is a country in its own right.
Right.
Anybody for free can get an account on it
Mm-hmm.
and post things and forward things on it.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the accounts are false accounts. Is that correct?
Oh yeah, I mean a lot of so Facebook is I want to say at least 1 billion users and growing, and it's anybody can have an account. For the false, you know, the amount of checkup and sort of taking out the trash of false users on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook and all the social media sites. I mean, that happens, but as people get through, it's hard to track people. A lot of businesses support boosting certain posts that may be misleading, and so one of the things we're seeing is a blend of personal. Well, this isn't anything new, but we're seeing it because we're seeing it online. You know, we're seeing a boost of people doing things for personal enjoyment, and then businesses pulling them one way or another unethically. And we've always had that in business. We've always had misinformation, you know, a little bit of misinformation in ads. You know, 3 out of 4 doctors recommend Camel filterless cigarettes, you know, in the 40s and 50s. And so back to the election of Pizzagate, people who want to be afraid and who want authoritarian figures to step in and get rid of corruption and that sort of, you know, personality or character type, even people who are moderate voters or people who are just parents, you know, who fear for kids, they can get swept up in things. And when people hold on to something that they then confirm either with their own bias or their own fear, that's always happened. But now that it happens at lightning speed, you're going to have more people reacting.
Well, it's exponential, right?
Yeah.
And when you talk about fear, that's back in the crucible.
Yeah.
Fear about witches.
Mm-hmm.
There aren't any witches.
They can be anywhere.
You know, they can be anywhere. You
Right.
can't see them.
Yeah.
So that's long been part of not just our culture, but it's human nature, I guess. but this ability to propagate it. So when you say a bot, I mean that's a digital robot, isn't it? That can basically send these things out a whole lot faster than anybody with the fastest hands.
Yeah, and the meme is memes have been around for a long time. It's basically just an iconic picture or an iconic saying. And so the most common meme that we see is usually a picture with writing on the top and then writing on the bottom. And usually they're funny, usually they're slightly political, or they can poke fun at a sports figure or whatever. You can make one. I paused. I was showing the Crucible today. I paused one part at the end of Act 1, and the look on Tituba's face was funny, but it was also horrendous because all of these girls are going nuts, and she just kind of stares at them. And every kid had the same reaction I did, which was, this is the end, and it's kind of funny looking. And that itself could be a meme. So, let's say somebody shares something about their favorite actor, or they have pictures that take, famous funny pictures with different sayings. That's the most common. The Trump supporters, the people who propagated the Trump memes, they were so good at it, so professional, that they targeted different voting sections. And they created their own thing called Pepe the Frog, which was this sort of racist neo-Nazi blend. And they had funny memes, they had harsh memes. It's basically if we were sitting around telling racist, dirty jokes, put that on a picture, and people love that stuff. And that is kind of the PG-13 R side of social media that is that people enjoy. And
some people.
Well, yeah.
Many, as it turns out.
Yeah, many. The bot can be a program, or it can be just something that's generated to add likes or to refresh a page. So, for example, if you publish online for money, if you're a paid writer, you maybe get 50 cents for every 1,000 views. Okay, so if I can hire a bot to give me 500,000 views, and all it's doing is refreshing the page, then I'm gonna make that money until they find out what I've done. And so, so sometimes when you see a lot of likes, it's disingenuous. It could be downright unethical, or it could just be someone who hired, Russian bots somewhere.
Well, and
which provides jobs, but is
not
but
to
it's
the
not,
right people.
Yeah.
I heard, as a matter of fact, on WBUR, they have an investigative journalism show on Sunday evenings called Reveal, and they did a show about this Pizzagate thing. It really had dug in deep for months, went to Macedonia and talked to people who for pay were writing these things and so forth, went to people who claimed to have incriminating evidence, show up, and they don't have it.
Right, of course not.
And some of them are just sort of lost souls. But this is a way of having some presence in the world. You wish you could give them therapy remotely, but
a lot of them, similar program, were interviewed. They liked Hillary. They were Hillary supporters, and they said, "Look, if they're going to pay me to write a false article, scintillating headline, and then false information, I'm going to do it." And those are this is an opportunity. I'll give you $500 to write, Hillary marries, former alien, from some planet, and they'll do it, because you can be protected under certain guidelines for writers. But if people click on it, they think it's real. They think it's a real paper.
Yeah.
They think it has credentials. Most people don't check those things. As I teach a research paper, I teach, to mine all the footnotes when you find a good resource. There's all this ethos to it, but most people don't. They say, "Oh, I want to believe this, so I'm going to share this with."
Or maybe they don't at first, but after they've seen the thing 10 or 20 times, it must be true. It's coming from all kinds of directions, different sources, ostensibly. In that Reveal story, they described how they found, if you go, it's almost an origin story, the genesis of it, in terms of seeing that there were Russian hands in that original story. And then it went through wave after wave of second and third level effects to the point where we're talking tens of millions of people. you know, we're all caught within our own thought system. And I hope I'm open to other people saying, Mike, you got it wrong, you know.
Yeah. You
so
might not be.
So I'm not diverting here. We've talked about fashion. We've talked about the theater.
Yeah.
I'm going to go to pro basketball. The Celtics have Kyrie Irving now. Celtics are doing really well. He's a great player and apparently a good guy. Jeremy, he believes that the world is flat.
Yeah.
Or at least he professes to. Maybe it's just kind of a gag. But there is something called the Flat Earth Society.
Yeah.
It's very hard to talk about whether the Earth is spherical with people who believe it's flat. How do you do that politically? How do you push back against this?
Well, if you're flying and you look down, it's all very flat. But that's not going to get you credit if you're talking to a scientist.
You don't have to be a scientist. You hop on a fishing vessel, go 20 miles east, and where did North America go? Right?
Right, yeah.
You're just in the middle of the ocean.
It went over the edge. Scylla, Charybdis are down there somewhere, spewing out the ocean 3 times. You know, I love that question because that's something I've personally been grappling with for years, because belief is the most powerful thing in the world. And you can believe something even though you know it's a lie because it protects the people you love. You cannot, and something I've learned as a Democrat and as a progressive and a liberal, and I'm always, you know, like teaching high school, teaching English, everything we do is with social studies, right? So if I'm talking about the Crucible, I'm also talking about marginalizing people in society. So now we're talking about undocumented workers. We're talking about marginalizing people because of drug laws. We're talking about incarcerated people. We're talking about all the different people in society which is the reason why the Crucible has been the most popular play. You know, it's over 600 productions in every country, including countries that have abused and incarcerated their people for years. And so when you talk about convincing someone out of their misinformation, which has led to their belief in something, you can't do it in a conversation. If we talk about climate change or flat Earth, any of that, you have to work around that, or you have to let that person gently come to things that you and I would call facts. I mean, facts are stubborn things, but if you say, well, that's nice, but I believe, you know, ... At that point, you have to either walk away from the conversation, or you have to talk about something else, or it can't. I get burnt out I got burnt out trying to convince people to believe something different, and so you simply have to have a conversation, or you say, look, what can we agree on? You know, like let's find an angle of this, you know, with my libertarian and Republican friends who I love, you know, family, friends, you know. If I spend 5 hours arguing on Facebook and they never concede a point and I never concede a point, you know, and I say, well, look, show me all that stuff that they marred Hillary with. Where's your proof? Where's the actual proof? Oh, well, anecdotal, this and that. Okay, well, let's flip the side to Trump, and, you know, and if they're not going to concede anything and I'm just going to say, this is it, I'm leaving it on the table, let's grab a beer, then that might be the best thing, because we can't be in the business of trying to convince everybody. Actually, that's a big problem Democrats have, is we're the teachers, and they say, I hate teachers, I hated school, don't teach me something, you're not better than me.
Well, the other thing to think about is whom we're talking to, and it would be nice if everybody wanted to live in an evidence-based world. And we don't. We don't, right? Yeah. And as we've said, going through generations, it's never been that. But we really are talking about a time now of deep division where people are talking past each other.
Yeah.
I hope there's some way where we're not trying to convert the people who are zealots. Because it's wasting their time as well as us. Yeah. But there are other people where it seems to me if you pursue the kind of inquiry that you were suggesting, let's look at the evidence.
Yeah.
One of the questions you might ask about an idea is, what do you have to assume to make it true? right? So, what is it? Occam's razor.
Yeah, Occam's razor.
So, all of the nonsense about Obama being born in Kenya, Kenya.
Yeah.
Okay. We're doing this live to tape, so you got both options.
Yeah.
So nobody seemed to say, now wait a second. Imagine there were a possibility of that. Not only a certainty, but I mean a possibility of that. Do you think that John McCain would have just witnessed the inauguration? Do you think that John Roberts, the Chief Justice, would have sworn people in?
Right.
You have to assume that a whole lot of people are in it.
In on it, right.
And I guess, I mean, if you
That's
are,
where the belief comes in.
if you're fearful,
Yeah.
if you're given to conspiracy theories, that's one thing. But a conspiracy theory really requires that people have their act together enough and coordinated enough.
You have to have great faith in people to keep a secret.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And that's the thing is you say, well, they're all in on it.
Yeah.
John Roberts is in on it, and
the answer is so really? How do they organize that? Because if that's the case,
they're super geniuses.
The Earth is flat.
Sure.
But I think there are some people who may be able to back off a little bit. And I hope that some of the work that what we regard as the serious media, like Reveal or like the New York Times or whatever, ultimately carries the day with enough people, and there's enough blowback, even if the Russians' hands weren't in it, and they were. As it turns out, this would be a horrible thing in terms of destroying people's sense of democracy and belonging to a community.
Well, that's the thing that, as performance art, if you look at Trump's rise, right, to call the New York Times and the Washington Post fake news, to call out John McCain not a war hero, I like guys who don't get caught.
Yeah.
Nobody would ever say that in public. I mean, like that's just something, to call out, to say this whole area, this is the swamp, they're all corrupt, she's corrupt, he's corrupt, was brilliant. I mean, you're watching Lex Luthor, and people kind of take confidence in that because the next step is the neo-Nazis and giving them a leg to stand on and saying, okay, these beliefs
good people on both sides
used to be ridiculous, and now we're saying, well, not only is 97% of the scientific community wrong about climate change, but Obama was never born in America, so we can, it all kind of comes together, and
but isn't it interesting how it must metastasize that way? Because there was a time not that long ago, well, long from your point of view perhaps, but when Ed Muskie ostensibly cried at a microphone in New Hampshire, and that did it in 1972 for him as a candidate, and more recently when Howard Dean supposedly screamed,
which is nothing today.
Nothing today in terms of the things that are saying. So what has happened to our standards in terms of what is acceptable?
I don't want to blame social media.
Yeah, okay.
But if you draw a line from round-the-clock cable news coverage, right? You see this evolution of like, we're paying attention, now we're always paying attention.
Yeah.
We're always on our toes. Everything is breaking news. And then you put all that into this little thing that becomes an extension of your hand. And you're constantly doing this. And now it's sort of becoming this cycle of internalization, which is the bad side. I mean, I do want to say good things about social media, but in terms of like human behavior, we have made it such a personal cycle that we now see everything. Everyone has a YouTube channel. Everybody has a meme. Everybody has a personality. Everyone's become a brand. Every person, whether they know it or not, is a business. All of your information is being sold to millions and thousands.
Privacy is out the window.
It's out the window. But when Howard Dean did his thing, right, that was right before, I think before the iPhone took off, before we got these things. And they repeated it so many times. But now, you can imagine like that was a bucket of water. We're now in the ocean. Everyone's doing these things.
So, but a couple minutes ago, let's talk about the positive side of social media. I hope you can give us some guidance on that. I remember, we had that moment of the Arab Spring when it appeared there was a lot of connection between younger people in Egypt and other countries and so forth. Was that just a fleeting moment, or is there a reason why this can
today Mugabe stepping down? You know, like this. The greatest positive thing is that the more people are connected, the more positive things can happen, because we're now sharing all of our liberal views on women, on gays, liberal views on children, on education. You know, you take the countries where the young people have been taught all of this fundamental nonsense, right? When the children are empowered with ideas and they have that, that idea of, oh, I can read this myself, that is going to, I hope, become a positive thing. The other side is we have now enabled generations to record things and share things. My grandmother lived to 96, right? And if I had done more of it, I know all her stories, but if I had been able to record those, or she had been able to just record things or share things, imagine all the people in Gloucester doing that, all the people on Cape Ann. Those are the positive things that I love to focus on more than the pictures and
Well, the interesting thing, I don't want to manufacture a half full, because that's maybe more than half full answer here. If you look at public opinion polls on the issues, people are in favor of climate regulation, environmental regulation.
They like clean air.
People want to support the public education. People don't like the Republican tax thing. People don't like our incumbent on that. So in the face of all of this nastiness on the internet, there still is a solid core of values that most of us agree on. So we've covered a lot of ground here. Jeremy, it's just great to talk with you.
Well, thanks for having me.
Well, thank you for all you do. One last word. What's the name of your online magazine again?
The Good Men Project.
Great. We'll look it up, and
thank you.
We'll keep in touch. Thank you so much.
Great.